Owning a lakeside property had always been my dream. After years of hard work, I finally bought a quiet home tucked away on a private lot with a serene lake as my backyard. What I didn't anticipate was that this dream would come with its own built-in antagonist, Karen. Not just any Karen, but HOA Karen, the self-proclaimed enforcer of rules, even when the property in question wasn't hers to enforce. My house sat outside the jurisdiction of our local homeowners association, but that didn't stop Karen from inserting herself into everything I did. She lived 3 lots down and had once tried to ticket me for painting my shed a color she didn't approve of, even though I wasn't under the HOA's covenants. I brushed her off then, assuming she'd get bored and move on, but I underestimated her entitlement. One Saturday afternoon, I returned from a weekend grocery run to find something completely outrageous. Karen's cousin, whom I'd never met, had set up camp by the lake behind my house. There were lawn chairs, a portable speaker blaring music, and even a cooler full of drinks. A group of 4 people lounged like they owned the place. One guy even had a fishing line cast out, his bait bobbing in my private lake. I stood frozen for a second, blinking, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My dock had clearly posted signs, "Private property, no trespassing." They were visible from every angle. The audacity of these strangers to set up shop in my backyard like it was a public park was beyond belief. I took a deep breath and walked down the slope toward the lake. "Afternoon," I said loudly enough to rise above the music. "Can I help you?" The woman in the pink sun hat barely turned her head. "Oh, hey, Karen said it was fine, said her cousin, me, could hang here today." "She doesn't own this property," I replied. "This is my land. You're trespassing." The fishing guy snorted. "Relax, man, we're not hurting anything." I glanced around. Beer cans were already scattered across the grass. One of the guys had dropped cigarette butts near my dock. My blood simmered. "No," I said firmly. "You're on private property. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, now." The woman, Karen's cousin, stood up and got in my face. "Karen said this lake was for the whole neighborhood." I pulled out my phone and opened the property map from the county assessor's website. "Nope, see that red line? That's the boundary. I own this lakefront. Karen doesn't speak for anything here." The cousin stepped back, glaring. "You don't have to be a jerk about it. I'm asking you nicely. If you don't leave, I'll call the police." She didn't like that. The group grumbled, stood up slowly, and started packing their stuff. I watched carefully, arms crossed, as they gathered their things, but the cousin wasn't done. She whipped out her phone and called Karen. I couldn't hear the whole conversation, but her loud voice carried, "Yeah, he's being super rude. He said we're trespassing and threatened to call the cops. I thought you said this lake was for everyone." 5 minutes later, Karen stormed down the slope in her signature visor and clipboard combo. "Excuse me," she barked. "What's going on here?" "They were trespassing," I said calmly. "I asked them to leave." Karen scowled. "This lake is a shared community feature." "No, it's not. I own this property, and that includes the lake access and shoreline. You can check the deed." Karen turned red. "You don't have to be so aggressive. I'm enforcing my rights. I warned your cousin. Now I'm calling the police." That pushed her over the edge. "You're harassing my family," she shouted. "I'm calling the police on you." I pulled out my phone and calmly dialed first. "Hi, yes, I'd like to report trespassers on my private property. Yes, I have signs posted, and yes, I have video." While I was still on the call, Karen's cousin walked over to the dock and pretended to trip on the edge. She let out a dramatic cry and grabbed her ankle. Karen screamed. "He pushed her!" "What?" I said, incredulous. "You've got to be kidding me." My security cameras caught everything. 10 minutes later, 2 squad cars rolled up. The officers walked down the hill to the dock while I met them halfway. "Officers, I have everything on camera," I began. "They were trespassing. I asked them to leave peacefully." Then she pretended to fall and claimed I assaulted her. "Check the footage." Karen tried to interrupt, but one of the officers held up his hand. "We'll take statements in a moment. Do you have that footage?" I nodded and handed over my phone. I had already pulled up the clip. They watched silently as the video showed the group setting up by the lake, my calm approach, the clear posted signs, and the fake stumble at the end. One officer looked up. "Ma'am, you said he pushed you?" Karen's cousin stammered. "Well, he threatened us. We felt unsafe." That's not what the footage shows. They took statements from everyone, then conferred by the cruiser. A few minutes later, one officer walked back over. "Sir, your property boundaries are clear, and your signage is legal. You acted appropriately." The officer continued. "You've been law enforcement about involving yourself in disputes outside the HOA's jurisdiction." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but then stopped. Her cousin, now in handcuffs, was led toward the cruiser. She shouted, "This isn't over. We'll sue you." I shrugged. Good luck with that. As they drove away, the other officer gave me a knowing nod. "You might want to print out that property map, just in case." Later that evening, I reviewed the footage again and uploaded a heavily edited version to my private channel. The title, HOA Karen's cousin, trespassed on my lake, left in handcuffs. The comment section blew up. "She really faked an injury? Entitled people never learn. Glad you stood your ground. Love seeing calm logic win." Word spread fast. The next HOA meeting had a record turnout, and not because of any agenda items. Karen showed up, avoided eye contact, and said nothing the entire meeting. Afterward, a few board members approached me and quietly apologized for the misunderstanding. But the kicker came 3 weeks later, when the county issued a warning to Karen for repeated harassment of non-HOA properties. Apparently, she had pulled similar stunts with 2 other homeowners in the area. She hasn't stepped foot near my lake since. Owning a piece of nature is a gift, but sometimes protecting it means standing up to people who believe rules only apply when they benefit them. Thankfully, a camera, calm words, and a property deed are often all you need to win.